Hello everyone, thank you for checking out my video. This is my first ever speed build in The Sims 4, and today I made an opera house. And it was one of the longest builds I've ever done. I think in all it took me over like 20 hours to complete everything, like start to finish, and it literally took forever. But for that reason, this video is actually going to be split up into two parts. I'm actually going to do all of the building and the layout inside and everything in this video, and then in part two we will do all of the different kinds of furnishings in the different areas that are actually inside of an opera house. So the theater and the stage and the backstage and like all the different guest areas and everything else. So be sure to watch out for part two of this video. But yeah, so like I said, this is my first ever kind of speed build in The Sims 4. And it's actually a little bit differently than how I normally go about building anything anyway. So what I had done here is I knew I wanted to do this opera house, but I actually used reference images and a little bit of Google Earth to kind of look at different opera houses around the world and kind of check out like what they actually look like. So that's kind of why I did it rather strangely, at least for me. Normally I don't go about like doing builds with this huge kind of boxed out like area, and then I'm slowly kind of, determining the shape and the sizes of things like overall as a whole. Usually I go like room by room or like a little area on the outside of the house and get it all looking nice, and then kind of add on from there and kind of organically just builds. But this is a little bit differently because like I said, I was using references and I was kind of trying to make it look like a real world, kind of realistic opera house. So I went about it kind of differently. One of the things that I tried to do was to copy this opera house that I actually found. I think it was in the Ukraine. I believe that's where it was. And I was looking at it on Google Earth. And so I got kind of the shape of the building and I kind of based off of that. The one place where I couldn't actually find any good references for was how to do a roof for an opera house or like a theater or something like that. So this is where I kind of struggled, and I think I went back and forth with all different kinds of roofing, and ultimately most of that footage kind of get cut because it just took far too long. So what you're seeing is kind of the end product here. What I do is I just kind of do the one big peak in the front and the back, and then I do kind of a dome shape in the middle. Eventually that weird shape that I kind of left there gets redone, and it's just actually a big old dome. And I think I added a few skylights, but for the most part I kept it completely flat, and then I just do a little bit of fencing to kind of fill things in. So one of the things that I also like to do in my builds is I add a lot of detail, and so you'll see as we go through it that I actually pull out a lot of different items. Like I use those arches that are from Get Famous, and I use like pillars and all kinds of things just to kind of add a lot of more detail to the build and kind of make it more organic looking. I like to add as much detail as possible because I think that's what really breathes kind of life into a build. So you'll see that that's what I kind of end up doing. I'll add windows and columns and, like I said, decorations, and it will get better. Like right now it kind of looks like a big old block, but it does actually get better in the end, I promise. So one of a little bit more about this build, it's actually on the 64 by 64 lot in Windenburg, which is my favorite world to build in. I like the kind of European Tudor style of everything and just how kind of everything looks in different areas. And I especially love the little island that's there. And that's where this is. This is on the von Windenburg estate. And so that's kind of where this is situated, but you could put it into any 64 by 64 lot. Now, if you're going to use it as a residential place, I wouldn't really recommend it, but you would if you can, and you would have to actually kind of flush out some of the areas because there are bathrooms, but there's no showers or anything because it was intended to be a community lot. And there's a kind of like a break room cafeteria type thing, but it doesn't have a stove or anything like that. It's just a microwave and like think of a refrigerator for like the employees, you know, to kind of have a break room. So you'd have to kind of flesh those things out. You'd also have to have a lot of simoleons, because I think after this was all done, this is a $3 million build, so it's quite a bit. But on the community side of things, you have a lot of options here. I actually had to write them all down, because you can run this as multiple different things. I think it could be an art center. I know there's a bar, added bars in here. There's a cafe. I think there's enough stuff for it to be ran as a library, a museum, a park, a nightclub. I know there's retail, because I added in a cute little like merch shop, you know, so if you went to a show and you could buy like a t-shirts or, you know, different kind of clothing items, and then they're like programs, and then I also put in some cute other things that you could buy from the like retail shop in the front, the merch shop in the front. So you can actually run this as a bunch of different things. I think I got all of them, but there's a ton of space in this build, so that's also probably why it took so long. And so therefore there's a lot of different opportunities for your Sims to do different things if they wanted to here, because as we know, there's no actual like theater or anything like that in The Sims, so you kind of have to make pretend and kind of do it that way. But one of the cool items that I used that I hadn't ever really considered using before were these pillars, and they're actually from Jungle Adventure, and I kind of used them all around, and I actually thought they looked good. I've never found a use for them before. They actually look really good in this build. I also ended up using the like knight statues to add a little bit more detail, and like I said, a lot of columns and windows. There's also the little, I think like the fancy kind of windows or dormers from Get Famous that I use into the peaks of the roof. I think that adds a nice little bit of detail too. But yeah, so this is one of my... I only have ever done two, I think, 64 by 64 lots before, and they kind of wiped me out. Like, after I finished this build, I kind of haven't done any more builds since then, because they take so long and they require, like, so much attention and detail, to get them to look good. So, I mean, it took me literally forever, and we're already, I think I had, like, just 10 hours of video just on doing the outside of this build, and that's not the whole thing. The interior took me far longer than that. But I don't know, does anybody else gonna do these things where they do like these really big builds and then get kind of tired and burnt out on The Sims afterwards? Maybe it's just me, but I typically do smaller sized builds, and this is actually my first time I've ever doing an intended community lot as well. So there was a whole lot of different things that I had to like kind of tackle that I had never done in The Sims before. But this is one of the cooler details that I liked. I actually used those little strips of like ruin from the Jungle Adventure again, and I actually used those as kind of the edging around all of the building, and I think it just added, like, again, a nice little detail to the entire build, kind of made it look a little bit more fancy. It also kind of brought in the brown from the base, kind of the first floor of the build, and kind of brought more brown up into the topper part. So I think it kind of balanced out the build. And I think I also end up using more of these, I don't remember what they're called, but they're also from Jungle Adventure, and they're those little, right there, the stone like slabs that have like the flower. You could probably use different ones, but I've never actually used them before. But I thought those looked really cool. And then here I'm trying to actually find the right flower boxes that I want to use, and I think I used the ones from Get Famous, and I just scale them down and put them on like every single window. Like I said, all the details go into it, and it just kind of makes it come to life for me. So a little bit more about me, though. As a kind of builder, I'm new to The Sims 4. I've only been playing The Sims 4 for probably about a couple months, I think since back in September or so. I really got into The Sims 4 and started building, and then I started watching a lot of different builders on YouTube, and that's kind of how I learned how to do all of the stuff in The Sims 4. I've started playing Sims way back with the original one, back when I was a kid, and then I've played every single version, I think. Yeah, so I played Sims 1, 2 for sure with my friends, and then I don't really remember playing Sims 3 all that much. I think I have it, but I'm not sure. And then I had Sims 4 for the longest time, and just never really played it very often until recently, and then now here we are, and I can't stop playing it. I think in the 4 months, I don't know if this is a big number or not, but it tracks, how long you've been playing the game, and I think I had something like 800 hours just in a short amount of time playing the game. I don't know if that's right. Like, I'm obviously not going to check the math to figure out if that's the accurate number. I don't even know if there's 800 hours in that short of time. But anyways, I think it was somewhere around there. It was a really big number, and it really surprised me on how much I actually had played The Sims recently. So pretty crazy. Like I said, I typically am more of a builder. I don't really do a whole lot of gameplay. I do have one sim that I play if I'm in the mood to actually go through gameplay, and she's like this tortured soul vampire chick, and so she's pretty cool to play. So I've only ever actually really played vampires in The Sims 4. I've not actually done anything else gameplay wise, but she's pretty cool. She has the romantic aura where she can where all the kind of men flock to her and are flirty with her without her trying to do anything. And she actually romanced someone who was married, and I think it was from someone from Get Famous. I think it was Bradley Thorne, or Thorne Bradley, whatever his name is. And the funny part is she's not famous, so she could only ever talk to him when she had her romance aura on. But then as soon as that went away, because after a while it fades, he wouldn't talk to her anymore and didn't like her anymore. So then he would just fight with her. So it was the saddest thing. She could only ever win this man with the her supernatural powers, and so it kind of made for fun gameplay, but it was also kind of very sad at the same time. So that's all I've done for gameplay. I mostly just build. A little bit more getting back to the build. Obviously, I added the knights, and I found this awesome painting from Get Famous that has this fancy kind of French Marie Antoinette character on it, and I thought that was perfect for an opera kind of poster or advertisement. And so I used it all on the outside of the building, and then I just put lights up everywhere. And then now here we are doing the interior, and so there's a lot of false walls, I guess is what I don't know if that's the correct term, but I kind of fill in a lot of these walls because there was clipping from the pillars that I kind of just didn't feel like dealing with, and I wanted to get nice shapes because there's a lot of I don't know what you call them, but just structurally interesting pieces, or pieces of wall and architecture that I didn't actually feel like I wanted to fill in with items or anything. So I actually fill a lot of those in. Here I'm just hiding clipping issues, and so I wanted to get a lot of those things kind of taken care of and just kind of tucked away before I go in to actually start doing the interior. The interior actually took so long for me to do. Like I said, I used reference a lot on the outside of the building, but for the inside, it was all just kind of made up on the fly. I didn't really have references to go off of. I mean, I've been to theaters before, especially Chicago theater and things like that. I'd been to them, so that's I just kind of went off of my memory of what those places are typically like. So I don't know if an opera theater has a special kind of interior or layout, but this is kind of what I did. You'll actually see me try to do a bunch of different things by trying to put curved balconies for the actual theater part, to do mezzanines and balconies and stuff like that, and kind of have seating. But one of the things I was having issue with was the floor was doing this weird kind of issue where the floor was just darker in spots, and no matter what I did, I couldn't really get rid of it. So I left the clips in here just to show you what I was thinking about doing with these whole curved things, which I still think would be really cool. But ultimately I ended up taking them out and kind of putting in more just angular mezzanines or balconies or whatever you want to call them. But I did leave in these rounded kind of boxes. I think they're what they're called, balcony boxes, the private seating for fancy people that can have their own little areas off along the stage. So I did leave these in, and there's 2 levels of those, which I thought were really cool in the actual interior part. But there was a lot of trial and error here, because when you put the balconies inside, any kind of time you make changes to like walls or flooring, it wants to fill in and get rid of those, or you have the opposite problem where the game thinks that that's no longer a room and it's actually part of the outside. So it's kind of a lot of trial and error with doing it, and I had to do it over and over and over again, and so I cut out a lot of it, but that's pretty much what the shape ends up being. And then here, actually what I did was I created the basement area because I wanted to put in an orchestra pit, so the place where all the instruments and like a piano and stuff like that would kind of go, which actually turned out really cute in the end. So you'll have to make sure that you check out the part 2 of this video to see how it turned out, because it actually looks really cool. And I did some kind of interesting things with the instruments to kind of make up for the fact that, you know, we only have guitars and pianos and violins and stuff like that, so to kind of fill out the orchestra. I had to get a little bit creative, which I think turned out really cute. Eventually though, in this, you'll see that I did the like front entryway a certain way with the stairs and stuff, and I eventually go back and kind of had to end up redoing it completely. And I wanted to do it more grand than how I had done it originally, so I cut that part out and I left this in because I wanted it to have stairs going up to the second and then kind of splitting off and going to the third, since we can't do, you know, big curved or multi-level stairs, and then just have this big grand open space that looked really, really cool. But then after this is actually getting to the end of the video. Remember that this is going to be split up into 2 parts, so all the furnishings and the like interior will get done in my next video, and there'll also be kind of a video tour to see it all come together in the end. But like I said in the beginning, this is my first ever speed build for YouTube, and if you guys have any tips or comments, please leave them, and so that way I can hopefully get better and better at this. But I also just want to say thank you for checking out my video, and until next time, bye!